So I've been kind of in a Pokemon mood lately. I'm not really sure if it's because ZA just came out or just the fact that I changed out the batteries on my Gen 2 games, but yeah, I've been in a Pokemon mood and I really just kind of wanted to play one of the games again. So I figured, to start off, let's just like go back to where it started, Pokemon Yellow. Well, I know Red and Blue started it off, but figured I'd go back to Pokemon Yellow for this one. It's just kind of the one I know has like the better sprite work, and I think it plays a little bit better than Red or Blue. Maybe I'm like crazy and that's not true at all, but either way. As far as my history with Gen 1 goes, I actually have more experience with the Gen 3 remakes of Gen 1, so even though I have nostalgia for these games, I haven't played them as much as like the Gen 3 ones. So I figured why not go back to Pokemon Yellow and see kind of how I feel on it and see if it holds up. Is it still fun to play? Is it as archaic as it might possibly be? So I think one of the things I really liked about this game was just like the sense of adventure, and specifically it's your adventure. There's a story there, but it's not like this crazy end of the world, like meteor coming down. Like it's nothing like that. It's a lot more personal. It's about like personal growth, getting your Pokemon, bonding with them, and just taking on the challenges really. Because I typically like the big crazy stories in JRPGs, but the more humble story fits really well for this game. Even the little story that this game does have, there's like so many fun and memorable moments in it. Like specifically taking down Team Rocket at Silphco and hunting down the legendaries is super cool. Even the first time you get a bike, it's like, that's a super big thing, Something else I really appreciated about it is the fact that you don't have NPCs talking to you every 5 seconds and just stopping all sense of progress. So the moments that NPCs do talk to you, they're kind of a treat actually. Anytime you see your rival, it is kind of a fun moment because it's not something that happens all the time. And as far as the world goes, I think Kanto is just the perfect kind of location for this game. Specifically just the perfect starting for the whole Pokemon series. It's it's so comfy, but it's also kind of intriguing enough. It's got interesting stuff about it. I do like the kind of more just humble approach that this whole game has. I think it's super cozy and fun. And I know a lot of people get Kanto fatigue and kind of Gen 1 fatigue in general, and I can kind of understand that. I do feel they try to sprinkle it into almost every game that doesn't need it. I definitely agree with that sentiment. But I do think Kanto and the Gen 1 stuff in general, there is a reason why it's a classic, because it is just that good, I think. And there's kind of this cool aspect to the game world in general that, it's kind of like a nature versus technology thing. I really like that kind of dichotomy. You got the more natural environments, and then, the more natural Pokemon, but you also have the kind of technological environments and then the technological Pokemon too. And there's kind of subtle hints about kind of the DNA stuff that they do with Mew and Mewtwo, and kind of how science influences the natural order of things and stuff. I just think it's kind of a fun topic that they kind of broach just a little bit. They don't get super detailed into it or anything like that, but I think it's a fun thing that they do kind of hint at. Now, the exploration of the game I think is actually super cool. It's almost like a Metroidvania in an aspect, because you get the HM moves that kind of allow you to go and open parts of the world that are otherwise locked off. You get cut to cut down trees, and then you get surf to surf through water, obviously. And I think the game world does a good job of funneling you through the story while not explicitly telling you where to go every 5 seconds. That's another aspect I really like, is that there's no waypoints in this game. There's no hint markers or anything. There's no NPCs telling you where to go every 5 seconds. It's kind of something you kind of just figure out naturally, but it's also, if you talk to the right NPCs, they'll tell you, where you need to go and generally stuff like that. It could be easy to get lost in this game, and I could definitely see that aspect, but I feel it funnels you enough to where you kind of need to go. And your goal throughout the whole thing is just collecting the badges. So it's if you look at the world map, it's okay, I gotta go to that city. How do I get there? Yeah, as far as the gameplay goes, I mean, it's where it all started. It's classic turn-based. It's basically you have your rock, paper, scissors approach to it. There's strategies you can implement, but I also feel you can kind of just power through this game if you want to. But then you have capturing Pokemon as well, obviously. That's the whole aspect of this game that kind of sold it. I think it's still fun and addicting as ever. Filling out your Pokedex is always kind of just a fun thing to do on the side. And, it's extra work for people who want to, completionists and stuff like that, but you don't have to as well if you don't want to. There's surprisingly a big amount of side activities to do in this game too. You have fishing, you have going to the game corner to gamble, which is always fun for your 10-year-old. Then you also have the Safari Zone as well. And it's kind of cool that all those things kind of tie back into just the core mechanic, which is capturing more Pokemon. Because even the game corner, you have to trade coins to get Dratini and stuff like that. I think Porygon as well. I know there's a lot of other RPGs that kind of just like throw in side activities here and there, and didn't really add anything to the world. It's just like, yeah, you can do that if you want to. And you know, it's kind of cool that like they actually like implemented it in a way that like ties back to the whole like mechanic of the game. So I think something super clever about this game that I like is the fact that they took like such a simple concept of having party members but making them Pokemon. I think having it be like, you know, Pokemon you train and actually, you know, fight with and explore with is like such a more personable kind of thing, because it's almost like, you know, animals. Obviously it's kind of like if you have a pet or something like that, it's just you kind of have like a more personal bond with them than you would like a human or a human character. So I think it's like such a cool idea that they kind of like implemented it the way they did. Not only the battling, but also just like the world exploration. Like you need the Pokemon in order to get through certain obstacles, whether it's cutting down trees or whether it's surfing across the, you know, the oceans and stuff like that. Just such a cool concept. I think they like nailed it just like right from the beginning. This might be like a controversial take, but I kind of actually like that the Pokemon don't get, you know, XP unless they're actually out on the battlefield. It makes so much more sense that way, because it's like if you want your Lapras to get, you know, XP, like you got to bring it out and like, you know, actually train it. It's not just going to gain XP if it's sitting in a Pokeball. Like it, like how would it even register that? It doesn't make any sense. So I kind of like the fact that like the older games kind of had it the way they did. This might be like another hot take, but I actually like the HMs. I think again, like they kind of make it so you're actually tied to the world and you're tied to the Pokemon you're using in that world. Like I can get why people get annoyed with them, but I don't think they should have scrapped HMs altogether, because again, it kind of just ties back to the whole theme of bonds and stuff and exploration, like just that whole thing. So yeah, I actually like the HMs, and again, that's kind of probably a weird take, but I just think it ties so well into the world and the Pokemon development and just kind of everything. So for my party, I decided to stick with Pikachu because, you know, I love Pikachu. He's not like my favorite Pokemon, but I think he's like the perfect mascot, and I love electric Pokemon too, so Pikachu's cool. Now, since it's Pokemon Yellow, one really cool aspect of this game is that you can get all 3 starters in the game. So Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. They're all just great Pokemon. I think they're cool. And like I said, it's a special aspect of this game that you can get them all. And then I also had Snorlax. I originally had a Primeape here, but I don't know, Snorlax is just a special dude, you know? He's kind of a guy you want in there, you know? He's just a fun dude, so. Another aspect of Gen 1 that's really cool is that you can actually get Mew in these games through a glitch. I remember seeing a YouTube video back like 15 years ago or something, and I just thought it was so cool that you can get Mew. So every time I do play a Gen 1 game, like I always make it a thing to get Mew. So Mew was in my party as well. And yeah, I just had a great time going through the world with these guys and just, you know, leveling them up and seeing all the sights, doing all the fun stuff. Obviously taking down the Elite Four as well. It's a good time. So yeah, I just love the whole bonds aspect of this game and, you know, Pokemon in general. I think it's what sets it apart from a lot of, you know, other RPGs and just other games in general. Something else I kind of wanted to touch on quickly is just the fact that like the music in this game is like so good. I think every track in this soundtrack is just super iconic. I feel like even if you didn't grow up with these games, there's something like super nostalgic about the music that just kind of like permeates the sense of like, you know, kind of old and just kind of like a memory, you know. It's a kind of a hard thing to describe, but I feel like the original soundtrack is just like super evocative of just nostalgia and kind of like good old times and stuff. I think Masuda knocked it out of the park, and like his work on all these games are just so fantastic. So I think some of the stuff that makes going back to Gen 1 a lot harder is item management. You only get like a certain amount of items you can actually carry on you at any time, and then your PC fills up pretty quickly too. So item management is like really bad in this game. Even some of the stuff revolving around the Pokemon themselves and the boxes themselves. You know, if your box fills up and you're out in the field and you want to capture a new Pokemon, it turns out like you can't. You have to manually go to a Poke Center and actually change the box in order to capture more Pokemon, so that's kind of a bummer. I think something else that's kind of harder to go back to this game, especially if you're not a fan of like older RPGs, is the encounter rate. You could legit like just keep walking like every 2 steps and encounter stuff, and that's pretty not the best. You know, I think like the later games kind of get a little bit better with that. I also think having to select the HM move specifically to use it every time, you can't just like click on a tree to use cut. You actually have to go to your Pokemon and use cut. It still works, it's just not the best. Also, not having like a quick select for certain items. So like in future titles, if you click like the select button, you can, you know, send out your fishing rod and stuff. But in this one, you have to specifically go to the menu every time, and that's kind of a bummer too. There's also like some slowdown in this game. And I don't think it happens all the time, but like specifically when you're on like the twirly pad things and like the Silphco and the rocket hideouts, that's kind of like crazy. Other than that, it runs pretty well. Like, I know these games are pretty notorious for the glitches and stuff, but you only really encounter them like if you're looking to encounter them, or if your game's kind of like bugged, obviously. Like, also the enemy AI is not the best in this game. They don't pick the best moves. They don't really challenge you at all. It's just kind of a thing with these games, and I guess they are for a younger audience, so it kind of makes sense. So yeah, that begs the question, does this game still hold up? And honestly, I think it depends on who you are, but to me personally, I think this game holds up really well, actually. It definitely has, a little bit of growing pains in it. Like I said, like, item management is bad, and having to change out your Pokéboxes every time you want to capture more Pokemon, that kind of stuff is like, not very great. But other than that, like, the sense of adventure is here, the bonds with your Pokemon are here, the music's great, I think Kanto's great, and there is definitely a nostalgia about it that I think, like, even if you didn't grow up playing it, like, you can kind of feel just kind of, there's like an atmosphere, and just exploring the world and just like hearing the music and all that stuff. I definitely think the games get better going on when it comes to like the quality of life stuff. But yeah, I think these were like the perfect starting off point for the series, and I think they still hold up to a certain degree. I could definitely see how it's like harder to go back to for a lot of people, but I still think it's a fun thing to play, and it's not my preferred way to play Gen 1. I would definitely play the Gen 3 remakes. I think those are like way snappier. The quality of life stuff's there. It's just a lot prettier to look at, but either way, these are fun games, and I'd definitely say if you're a Pokemon fan, you gotta like check these out at least once. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Pokemon Yellow, and I think it's a game that's still really fun to go back to. I'm actually thinking of potentially doing a series where I go through every kind of mainline title. Not every title itself, but like a main game and a main generation and stuff like that. So I think I might do Pokemon Silver next and go on from there, but other than that, let me know what you guys think about Pokemon Yellow and Pokemon Gen 1 in general. Do you still like going back to it? Do you prefer, Gen 3? Do you prefer even Let's Go? I mean, I don't know who does or who would, but it's there.